Hello and welcome to the Man City podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by Dennis Tueart, a man who's had no fewer than 3 stints at this football club, twice as a player and then again in 1998 as a director. Dennis had a unique playing career, with his spells at City split up by a successful stint at the New York Cosmos. He was a genuine pioneer, but it was his time as director that I really wanted to get to know about. Why did Joe Royle get sacked, and who were the difficult characters in Kevin Keegan's squad? I invited him to a somewhat noisy CFA for a chat to try and get to know a little bit more about his unique association with Manchester City. A year before joining City, he'd been part of the Sunderland side who had shocked English football by winning the FA Cup as a second-tier side. I started by asking him how that move materialised.
Well, again, I was fairly ambitious and I've been fairly aspirational all my career, all my life. And at the end of the cup run, the following season, we didn't really add any further quality, and Bob Stoker was the manager, but Bob Stoker was used to managing players on a shoestring. We got knocked out of the FA Cup early on the next year, in the year 73, 74 year, and we hadn't bought quality, and I was just coming up to 24, and I knew if I waited another year I'm going to be 26 before I get to the first division, which was obviously the prime league in the country, and I just had to make a decision. I asked for a transfer before Christmas. Prior to the deadline, then it brought me down on the Sunday before the deadline. I was asked to meet at Roker Park Sunday morning. I hadn't got a clue where I was going, who was speaking, because there was no agents. The press weren't as aware of what was going on, and again, transfers weren't such a big thing then. Spoke to Ron Saunders a couple of hours, and then Mickey Horswell and I drove down the next day on the Monday down the main road.
What do you make of the role of a modern day agent, because they come in for some criticism, don't they? And it seems that there's not that many good ones. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think because there's that much money in the trough, there's a lot of greedy agents around, and I think footballers do need advisors. That's the difference. There's 2 categories for me. There's agents and advisors. Agents are in for the money. Advisors are in for the long term. Advising the player not only what happens on the field, but also what happens off the field, and advising him, and also, in my view, developing as a person, because the youngsters, the players, got the rest of his life to live. And I've always said that football is a springboard into the rest of your life. You have to make sure the springboard's strong, solid, and it gives you an ability to live the rest of your life, and not so much in comfort, but certainly develops you as a player, and whatever challenges come to you off the field, because the easiest part of your life as a footballer is when you have to play football. The hardest part is when you finish your career. What do you do then? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And these are the important parts of developing the people. And I don't think agents do that, because agents, in essence, they're only after the commission off the next contract, whereas advisors can structure the whole of your finances, and domestically and beyond football.
What's the biggest piece of advice you would give to a young footballer today then?
You have to be prepared to give more than they think you do. Because I have a little phrase which I spoke to Nicky Weaver when I was a director. He was having a bit of a problem with one or 2 antics he got up off the field, and I went to see him one Saturday morning, and he says, "Well, Mr. Tueart," because I was a director. He says, "I just feel a bit low. And things I want to do with my girlfriend." He says, I've got a girlfriend," and he said, "When mates ring me, would you want to go out? Just go out." And I said, "Nicky, the big thing you've got to look at, to be one of the best, you have to be different from the rest. You have to be able to stand aside of the crowd and stand up and be strong, be aspirational, and that's what you have to do. It's difficult to youngsters when there's so much money thrown at them so early, and they're way above the station of their father, their parents, and their grandparents, and all of a sudden the usual, what I classify as hangers-on, come on just purely and simply to be with you because of what you're earning and who you are, not because of the person you are.
So your time at City then, I mean, the highlight of that first stint was obviously the goal in the final. I'm sure you're fed up with talking about it, but I just want to know, like, as a mere mortal, someone who's never played the game at that level, how does it feel to not only score a goal as important as that, but a goal as brilliant as that, because that has gone down as one of the great cup final goals, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's something which it's something which I call you lock up in your treasure box. You play a game. I think the average playing term of a player now, I think it was done by the PFA, is between 8 and 12 years, depending on injuries and such like. So, it's only a portion of your life. So, whatever you achieved, your personal achievements, you just wrap up in your treasure box and you keep them for life. They're yours, that you own them. And then, especially the way I did it, because it was a spectacular goal. It was in front of 100,000 people. It was at Wembley. But, if you think beyond that, it was a personal achievement. But also you win that for your team, you win it for your club and for your supporters, because I've always been someone who's right to supporters and the club and the team spirit, and that's so essential in a sort of a arena of the football arena. That's always essential. You've got to see the big picture, and you need those supporters. Without a question, I was always been related to the supporters. When I came to Manchester City, I was the president of the Junior Blues. Every Sunday morning before my wife and I had children, I was there Sunday morning on the meetings and take to see the kids and do things with the kids. And in those early years, that development, that Junior Blues organisation sustained Manchester City in the very, very low days, low years in fact, when we were struggling. But because of what we did in the early stages with the development of the youngsters and got them to bleed blood, but blue blood, sustained that weak period.
Did you think after that League Cup final that would be the last trophy City would win for 35 years?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I left. Again, same reason I left. The reason I left Sunderland, because Bob Stoker I didn't feel he was going to take the club on to the next level. I just didn't think we were moving on to the next level, and to include me personally, because I'd had a couple of injuries, a little hamstring, and when I came back, I wasn't in the first team. I was on the bench, and I was 28. I was still in the England squad, and I felt that really is not where I want to be at this stage of my career. If I'm not right quarterback in a football team, there should be a core group of players. And I think Alex Ferguson, he had a core with the class of '92 plus Roy Keane, and those 7 players underpinned his dressing room for 10 years. And he added a different kind of qualities: Ronaldo's, Jaap Stam's, Andy Cole's, all the different additional ones he brought in. But he had that core, and that's what we needed. And I felt I was part of that core. And the manager didn't seem to have that. So again, I thought, well, if you don't want me, if you don't think I'm a regular starter, I'll leave. Again, the same principle, same reason why I left Sunderland. I didn't feel, first of all, the club was advancing, and secondly, I wasn't advancing as well. Because I mentioned earlier about aspirations. The game is you're not in the game long. And you have to be able to achieve things, to win things, and get that treasure box as packed as full as possible with all your achievements and all your honours. And it didn't happen, so I asked for a transfer, and they granted it, and sat around and see what happened. And this was in about the November time of '77, and then I get a call from Tony Book. He says, "Just agreed terms of Man United for you. Want you to meet Dave Sexton and Les Olive." So I actually met up with Dave Sexton and Les Olive in Tony Book's house in Sale, and spoke to them about moving to Manchester United. Spoke to them, and as it happens, what influenced that decision was that evening I was playing in a pro celebrity squash game at a place called Droylsden. I forget the name of the squash centre, which had been organised by Freddie Griffiths, because there was 2 pros playing and 2 celebrities. And it was John Cleese against Leonard Rossiter. John Cleese from Fawlty Towers, and Leonard Rossiter from Rising Damp. And John Cleese had pulled a calf muscle. And my coach at the time was Bill Taylor. And him and I both played squash, and we were going to watch this tournament, that competition in the evening. And Bill knew where I was in the afternoon, because I was replacing John Cleese against Leonard Rossiter. So we went there. Carriages was the squash centre was called Carriages in Droylsden. And I went there in the evening, met up with Bill, and Bill knew where I'd been in the afternoon, and he said, "How'd it go?" I said, "Fine, yeah, fine. I'm just got to think about it. Don't have to move house, There was a lot of pluses." And he said, "Just answer me 2 questions." He says, "First of all, are they paying more than we are?" I said, "Yeah, a little bit." He says, "Do they have a better team than we have at the moment?" I says, "No, not quite." He says, "Well, why are you moving?" And I thought, yeah, you're right. So I rang United from the reception of Carriages to call the United deal off, and then went on the squash court in the evening and got hammered by Leonard Rossiter.
Was there a fear that you talked about your relationship with the fans? Was that in the back of your mind that perhaps if you went to United, then that might do some damage in that area.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. You're tossing these things all around your mind. The benefits with you get a little bit more money. You're not moving house. Your family is settled. It was an easy move. United was starting to develop, competing against. And again, in the back of my mind, I've been a part of this club and these fans for so many years, and we'd had a rapport and I like to think a love between the pair of us, fans and myself, and it was an influencing factor. It really didn't. It really wasn't just the money and the team. The relationship with the supporters just made me just pull out.
What about Peter Swales? What was your dealings and relationship with him like? Because I speak to a lot of people and his name crops up because obviously he had such a long association with the club, and there are varying sort of interpretations. I mean, what was your kind of assessment of him as a man and the way he operated?
Well, he was an entrepreneur. He was the old style entrepreneur, and he did a lot of good things for Manchester City because he was on the international selection committee. So I'm sure he would be flying the Man City flag and a lot of team selection issues. And I never had a problem with him. He's an entrepreneur, and what you've got to understand that sometimes you have to see the big picture and where he's coming from, looking for the club's perspective. I was disappointed when he said, "Yeah, you can go," to be perfectly honest. And but he felt the money he was going to get from me. They had young Peter Barnes coming up, so he was looking purely and simply. Whilst him and I had a good relationship, he was looking in the interest of the football club. He was going to get good money from me, and he had a replacement in Peter Barnes coming through, and he saw further down the line. So I had a good relationship even when I came back from New York, and it was through him that he persuaded me to come back to Manchester City. When I did come back, and then even when I stopped playing, I did have a good relationship with him. But you've got to understand that personal views sometimes get distorted. You have to be able to see the big picture and understand more than just what you personally would like.
The year after you won the League Cup for City, you finished second in the table, just a point behind Liverpool. Would you rank that as your biggest disappointment?
Yeah, very much so. Even though we were always, just because in those days it was 2 points for a win, not 3. We were always behind them, and we did push them to a degree, but not as much as we would have liked to have done. They all seemed to be a comfortable first, and we were trying desperately hard to be second. But it was again to give us another year in Europe. After League Cups in the 76 and 77, so we had 2 or 3 years in Europe. Again, didn't really do ourselves justice in Europe, which I would like to have developed a bit more. But 77 second, but second is nowhere really. It's and to be perfectly honest, we were a very poor second.
Yeah, and then the following year, obviously these further disappointment. City finished mid-table, and then you end up leaving. And this is a fascinating chapter of your life and career, isn't it? Can you tell me how the move to New York came about?
Well, it came after asking for a transfer, and obviously after turning Man United down, because I'd had a contact from a guy who I knew from London, who was doing a bit of agency work in America, a guy called Ken Adam. He just rang me and he said, the Cosmos are just reviewing, because I didn't know the time, but Pele had just retired and they needed another forward player. And the coach of the Cosmos was a guy called Eddie Fermani, who was more European based, played for Charlton, Italian descent, and there was more European players. He was looking at European players, and I had a call and said, would you be interested? And I said, wow, yeah, let's look at it, because we were getting loads of coverage from the North American Soccer League here in England. Cosmos were bringing 40,000 people to the games, and it was all fantastic. Beckenbauer had gone there, Carlos Alberto had gone there, Giorgio Canali, a very famous Italian centre-forward, had gone there, and they were starting to pick off some of the cream of the European players to come and play there. Even though they were sort of 31, 32, it was just to get the thing going. And I felt a bit like a pioneer.
You were the first English player, weren't you, to go out there?
Well, I was the first current England international. But before that, strange enough, after the Man United one, I got another call from a journalist friend of mine saying a friend of mine would like to speak to you, see if you're interested. Before this Cosmos thing came out in big time, and it was I knew who he was talking about because he was a friend of Brian Clough. So he said, would you take a call? This was after the Man United one. Would you take a call? I said, yeah, okay, because the thing with the Cosmos, they didn't need me till February, March. and this was like November, December of the 77. They didn't meet him because their season was summer season, April to September. So I said, okay, and I'm still exploring because it hadn't been confirmed with the Cosmos. We had negotiated, it hadn't been done. It was just a lot of talk and a lot of telephone calls backwards and forwards. And I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. So then I got a call from Peter Taylor. And Peter asked me 2 questions. He said, Dennis, we were very much interested in Nottingham Forest. I want you to ask the 2 questions. First of all, would you like to play for Nottingham Forest? And second, how much do you want? And I got chatting. We had a good chat. I said, Peter, I just got this thing about the Cosmos. Hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'd still like to think it over. Would you mind giving me 24 hours? He said, no problem. So he was great on the phone, Peter. And he rang me, to his word, the next night. And I said, no, this Cosmos thing it's just got me, it's a challenge. It's a new challenge. I feel like a pioneer. It's something new. It's something different. I think I experienced it, And he said, no problem, son. And we had a good 20-minute chat about football generally, and thank you very much. And off we went, still hoping that the Man United or the Nottingham Forest thing wouldn't go away if the Cosmos thing fell flat on its face. So, and I got another call, and then just after the New Year, just before the New Year, City had agreed terms, £235,000 for me to go to the Cosmos. So I met them. I went down to London with my wife and I, because Ahmet and Dennis Tueart, they owned Atlantic Records, part of the WAA music group, and I went down to see them in their big luxury pad in London. It was like an interview. I walked in, my wife and I was sat in the waiting room, and I get a call as I'm going down the corridor to the meeting room. There's a group of lads, and he was interviewing a pop group before me, so I was getting interviewed by pop impresario, and we got chatting with Ahmet Erdogan. He said, yeah, we're interested, your quality and all this. And he started questioning my ambition and what I want to do. And I just stopped him there. I said, Ahmet, just clarify things. I said, I'm 28. I'll be the first current England international to go full-time, because Peter Swales had tried to persuade me to go summer season only. And unfortunately, if anybody who knows me, I can't do things by half. I'm either going to fully committed or not fully committed. I can't do a half and half job. And I didn't think that was fair to either. I would have made a bit more money, but at this stage, that's not desperately important. I was going to make plenty going to New York. And I said, Ahmet, I want to know how ambitious the Cosmos are. I said, you asked me to give up everything at home, England international, successful club, 20 years in my peak. The next 4 or 5 years are going to be my peak years. How ambitious are the Cosmos? Why should I come and join you?
So you started interviewing him, essentially.
In essence, yeah, turned the tables on him, and I think he was impressed by it, because I was honest, I was open, and you could see I wasn't going to be there for the ride. Went home, came back, then the club agreed terms, and then I went down to. Well, they came down. The big heavy hitters came down to with my advisor. Agents and advisors. My advisor, Ruben Kay, he was fantastic for me. He was one of the early accountants, stroke agents who looked after players, and he looked after Bobby Charlton from his first to his last days in football. Sadly died about 10, 15 years ago. Fantastic advisor, real common sense, fantastic knowledge. And him, and we had a tax advisor, came to his offices in Manchester on Deansgate, and there was about 6 of the American brigade with the big old braces and talking about doing the final deal, and we did the final deal in the offices in Deansgate, and then I was a Cosmos player.
That decision must have been a really tough one. I mean, Forest, the Nottingham Forest story under Brian Clough is one of the great chapters.
Next year they won the
European Cup.
Yeah, and the next year after that as well. So yeah, but you can only make decisions based on the stuff you have in front of you. Football is a short-term lifespan. You can't, I always talk at football. You can't talk about short, medium, and long-term strategy in football. You've got short-term strategy and maybe a medium-term, but forget long-term strategies. It's short and medium, and that's it. And I've worked at football views on my football career as I have in my business as well.
So how did it feel then to be moving out there? And it's a global game now, but probably less so then.
And I've got some great analogies here, because when I went, first of all, I got the treat of going out in Concord went on Concorde, went down to the Dorchester the night before and stayed overnight there, then flew to New York and on Concorde. And a few days before that, JFK Kennedy at the airport had been closed because of the snow. So there was a doubt that I was going to make it with Concorde. But, Concorde being Concorde, as we'd landed in JFK, it was like the parting of the Red Sea. They'd blown all the snow off the runways and taxiways. They were stacked high. The snow was stacked high. And we drove into JFK and then limousine to the city, stayed in the city. And the first night was unbelievable. We just went for a walk outside the hotel that night because we got there sort of late afternoon. And we're just walking down there. There's a cab driver, a yellow cab driver, just drove past, and he winds the window down and he shouts out, "Hey, Tueart, are you signing for the Cosmos?" I was absolutely gobsmacked. Literally, I've been in the hotel an hour, I've been in the city an hour, and the guy, so you can tell, there'd been a bit of awareness. But so we did the deal next. But the next day went to the final deal, and because my accountant and my solicitor, Ruben and my solicitor, they went into a private room to do the final negotiations about tax, about structure, about payment terms. And they just sat my wife and I, and every year the Cosmos used to produce a highlight video in those days it was, of the previous season. So they put the 25-minute video on, and I'm sitting watching it. I said to my wife, I said, "Bloody hell, I'm replacing Pele here in this team." Because Pele, I see the position he played, and the two lads was a guy called Steve Hunter, was a young English lad who had a great few years there, and Giorgio Canali was a centre forward. I was going to be playing up front with those two, and that's where Pele played the previous 3 years. So no pressure there then.
How does that feel, replacing one of the
Well, he's my all-time hero.
Yeah.
He played in my view, the best national team ever in the history of football, 1970. When you've got Carlos Alberto, Jairzinho, Rivellino, Tostão, Pele, Gerson, that's the core. The best 7 players in the world in your team, it helps. And it was just a privilege to sort of get amongst them.
Did you have any concerns about the quality of the league? Because I know that still sort of exists today, doesn't it? With even in the guise of the MLS, that people think that going out there the pace is going to be slower or the defending's not going to be quite as good. Did you have any concerns?
Yeah,
about
but
that?
it was different, and the quality that we had was the passing. Franz Beckenbauer insisted on possession. He'd love playing with Pep, because I tell you, he would go berserk if you give the possession away. And on AstroTurf, you had to be accurate, because the grass wouldn't slow the ball down, it would run out of play, so you had to be accurate. So there was other little challenges. And we won the championship my first year, and I was MVP of the playoffs. I had a great playoff season. I had a hamstring the first season, and got over that, and then had a great last 2/3 of the season, won the championship. I was voted MVP of the playoffs and offensive player of the game, which is the final game. We beat Tampa Bay in front of 75,000 people at the Giant Stadium. And I got 2. And so, again, that aspirational treasure box got another couple of little trophies. Oh, not little trophies, they were blinking huge trophies.
So that's real justification for you to make that kind of bold decision to go out there, because you've had success and you've proven yourself to be a quality player and played alongside some of the game's best players as well.
Yeah, it was great, and it was a different experience, because in the mid to late 70s, English football was going through a real trouble with violence, the weather, the quality of stadiums. So there's all these areas that English football hadn't moved on. But yeah, you go to America and they've got state-of-the-art stadiums, infrastructure, facilities for supporters. I mean, we averaged 47,000 people the 2 years I was there, and they used to have the tailgate parties before the game, because we kicked in the afternoon, and all the tailgate parties were out, the barbecues were out, because of summer season. It was just a completely different environment. My wife loved it. We had got my family coming over both years when I was there, different mum and dad, Joan's mum and dad, my brother, Joan's sister, friends came and visited us. So it was a complete experience for a lot of different people.
So they were owned by Warner, the Cosmos, weren't they?
Well, Warner, it was the concept that we have here is exactly what we had in 1977, 78, 79. Except it was right time, right strategy, wrong place. America wasn't ready.
Yeah.
The strategy, we had 13 different nationalities in our dressing room. I could swear in 5 languages. Because my status, my visa status, I was a non-resident alien, which meant I could only stay in the country 6 months in the year, but we were being paid for 12 months, so pre-season, post-season, they take us around the world on exhibition tours, exactly what we're doing now, exactly what the Premier League clubs are doing, but all the major clubs are doing now. You can see where they're in the Champions League all around the world. Exactly the same focus. My last tour before I came back was in September, October of '79, and I was away for 6 weeks, played 14 games in 8 different countries: Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Australia. We played eight different countries, 14 games in 6 weeks.
So that idea of buying Galactico-style big-name stars and then taking them around the world, trying to spread the game...
Started with the Cosmos. It was their strategy. And what they did also, like, for instance, what Juventus have done, they bought Ronaldo, not so much to increase the attendance on the games, but the commercial revenue.
Yeah.
Cosmos bought Pele in 1975. 75, 76, 77, 3-year deal. They bought his name, used him to promote products. Exactly the same strategy. Nobody's reinvented the wheel.
No.
It was done with the Cosmos in 1975, 6, 7. Had a great strategy, fantastic strategy, and we went out and they earned money. They were being paid $50,000 a game, the Cosmos, plus expenses. Every single. And we went. Let's be fair. We went out in the country, around the world. We were playing to capacity crowd. We had played 2 games in Indonesia, 80,000 people. In the 2 games, we played in the Sydney Cricket Club, 50,000 people. We played in the National Stadium in Japan, 50,000 people. It was just unbelievable. We were like Hollywood on the road, and it was just. And me as a young boy from a working class east end of Newcastle, it was just a fantastic education, and it was great for my development as a person as well.
So how does the move to City come about? Was it just a case of your time at the Cosmos had come to a natural conclusion?
No, it's exactly the same. I've always said the only reason a player moves is the M factor. It's either money or manager. Are they not getting paid enough, or you fall out with the manager? And both my instances, leaving City, Tony Book decided to go a different way on his team selection, which I didn't agree with, so I leave. The second season of the Cosmos, halfway through the second season, the Eddie Firmani, the European coach, was fired, and they brought in Professor Mizet. He was South American, friend of Pele's, and his focus was more on South American players than European players.
Yeah.
So him and I didn't see eye to eye, so I said, if he doesn't want me, I'll leave. And I got an approach from an agent trying to sell me to Derby County. I said, I don't want, because I just bought an apartment in Bowden, and my wife was pregnant when I came back Christmas time of 1979. So our firstborn was born in April, so we had an apartment in Bowden. So he was born in April in Bowden. So I said, well, let's see. And I said, I don't want to go to Derby. I said, I'll stay in the northwest. And he said, well, what about Gordon Lead, Everton? I said, well, ask him. I don't mind. I'll just decide on what opportunities come along. And he kept trying to sell me to Derby County. I says, I don't want to go to Derby County. Pay the same money. I don't. At this late stage, more important to me is where I want to be. So I said to him, I said, listen, forget about it. I says, I'll ring Manchester City, see if they're interested. I was only just turned 30. I was 30 in November, so I wasn't. I was always looked after myself. So I rang Peter Swales. I said, Peter, what do you think? He says, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I might be interested. I said, well, let me just tell you. I says, because he changed a lot of the team from where I left to when I came back. So I says, listen, I need to have a relationship with a coach. I says, he brought Malcolm Allison back. I said, I want a meeting with Malcolm. If Malcolm doesn't want me, the deal's off. So Malcolm came to my house and my apartment in Bowden, and just sat down and I says, Malcolm, just before we go, I says, there's 2 Malcolm Allisons I know. I says, the one that Colin Bell and Mike Summerby told me about, fantastic coach, great on with the players, develops the quality of players. I says, but the second one, which I don't particularly enjoy, is what Mike Shannon, Asa Hartford, Dave Watson told me about, because Malcolm got rid of those when he came back. And I says, I need a relationship with the first one, not the second one. And I said, if you don't want me to come back, I won't come back. Not a problem. And I think he enjoyed it again, man. Honestly, very similar to what I had with Ahmet Erdogan. They could see my focus. They could see what I wanted to do. I wasn't going to go anywhere for a free ride. I was still aspirational. And then did the deal, and they paid £235,000 for me. And with the currency exchange, I think the currency exchange would change in the benefit of the dollar. They were going to get more. The Cosmos were going to get me the money back, but more because of the change of exchange. And I said, no. I said, if I've got to do a deal with Man City, I said, I'll tell you what. So they were going to prepare to pay £250,000 to get me to come back, because in that time I'd been away. The market had gone like that. We paid Preston £750,000 for Michael Robinson. We played Wolves £1.4 million for Steve Daly. We'd paid silly money at that stage, and I says no. I says, I said to Peter Swells, I'll ring the Cosmos, and because I've had a good 2 years out of me. Won the championship first year, semi-final second year, good 2 years out of me. I said the fee is £150,000. I said I'm going to tell him that. So I rang a guy called Rafael de la Sierra at the Cosmos, and I said, Rafael, I've got 1 more year left of my contract. I says, the only club I'll come back to in the UK is Manchester City, and the price is £150,000. I said, you've had 2 good years at me. You paid $235. With the currency exchange, you're getting your money back. And I says, if you don't fancy it, I'll come back for me next year. I'll just play me last year. Not a problem. And he came back to me and said, right, get them to sell me a telex. In those days, there's no emails, scanning. There's no how to sell a telex. So I just went to Peter Swell, sell a telex for £150,000, and we can do the deal. Get Man City sorted out, then we can sort our own negotiations. And then did that, and we came back. But the only problem when I came back was, before I left, we had a team full of internationals. When I came back, it was like a creche, and I was like the mother hen. You had Steve Daly, 19, Tommy Caton, 17, Ray Ranson, 19, 20, Dave Bennett, 18, 19. There was about 6 of the lads were babes, and then we had Mike Robinson, who was still finding his way, even though a big fee. Steve Daly still finding his way, even though it's a big fee. So we had a real mixed bag there. So it was a hard job.
When you came back to City, you said that the average age of the squad was too low. Had the quality dropped off as well?
Yeah, the quality, because we're naive. There wasn't enough experience. I mean, a perfect example, Malcolm was great on his tactics, but Malcolm's tactics, like we had Summerby, Bell, and that group, they were so talented. You could give them instructions, and they absorb the instructions straight away. But the younger kids, it takes a bit longer to absorb. It takes a bit longer to develop them and to get the information across. And I remember one little session at Platt Lane. We're all standing together in the middle of the pitch, and Malcolm was saying, right, I want to set this exercise up, this training exercise. When you do this, that, blah, 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 blah. Right, let's go and do it. So we broke off to go to our positions, and young Tony Henry was just jogging alongside him. And I said, right, Tony, do you understand what Malcolm's after? He said, Dennis, I haven't got an effing clue. So that's the challenge that Malcolm had in those days,
And then a really fascinating chapter of your life for me is when you come back as a director. What made you do that, and what made you want to get involved?
Well, I didn't really particularly choose it. Part of my business was video conference production, and also hospitality. So we just developed the Platt Lane stand with the new boxes with the balconies. So I took a box on, and right, no problem.
What year was this when you took that on?
95, 96, when the Platt Lane boxes behind the goal was first developed. I think it was either 95 or 96, I can't recall. So then all of a sudden I'm at one game, and Jeff Durbin, who's the commercial manager, said, would you pop downstairs, John and David Macon downstairs? Because they just put $5 million investment into the club. Stephen Butler put $5 million. They'd put $5 million into the club. And would you pop down and have a chat? Yeah, okay, no problem. So I had a good chat with them about my views on football, but just general informal. And then I was organising, prior to 96 Euros, I was organising hospitality at Wembley on behalf of Umbro. And in one of the games, a guest of Umbro was David Bernstein, who worked with Pentland Industries in the retail trade. So he's a guest of Umbro. And I got chatting to David just before the game, because he was a director at the time. He'd been brought on as a director. And we hit it off great, I got on really well. And he said, would you mind coming down to London and have a bit of a further chat? Because I mean, before the game it wasn't appropriate. There was a lot of guests around. So I said, fine. So I went down to London. I was on business. I met him at a coffee in town, in the city. And just got chatting and then left it. And then all of a sudden I get David and John Macon said, David Macon and John Royle said, just met up with me. He said, would you be our nominee on the board? I said, what's a nominee? What does that mean? I had 3 small businesses, I had 3 small children. I was very much flying. The businesses were just developing nicely. The kids were coming on, so I was quite happy with my lot at that time. So again, I went to see Ruben Kay, my advisor. Just talk me through this. What would this mean? What does that mean? Again, I need to understand what I need to do. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly. And he explained, and because Ruben had been worked with the Manchester City directors, Manchester United directors, and knew all about that, being in the boardroom. And he says, "You'll be a different class. You'll murder it." Oh, I said, okay. So I goes back to John Royle. I says, okay, I'll do it for you. And then that's it. Become a director. Then I always remember my first board meeting. Any other business? I said, yes, I've got one. I says, our lines of communication to our fans is appalling. I says, I get a feeling that people can ring a number at this club, somebody will pick them up, answer the phone at this end, and they'll have gossip, speculation, untruths, opinions. I says, we've got to get a complete, honest and open relationship with our supporters. I says, because they're going to save us in the short term, because we're on the way down to the 3rd level. And I brought in Chris Bird. So I met Chris on a couple of occasions, on PR occasions, and I thought he was aggressive. I thought he was progressive and aggressive, which we needed, because when I went to the Man City, I felt the place was a shambles. As an organisation, it was a shambles. We had some nice people in the organisation, but nice people who weren't aspirational. They were happy to run a corner shop. Well, I wanted Manchester City to be where we are now. The growth and the development, and we had to be aspirational. We had to make some tough decisions, and we made a lot of change. And Chris came in, and he was our great troubleshooter. First of all, he was a troubleshooter in the organisation, and secondly, he was great with the press. Knew what was happening, who was doing what was happening, and it helped us prepare ourselves to get that what I call the 2 things to run a business is unity, stability, and team spirit. Unity in the business, stability amongst the business, and team spirit amongst the people in the organisation. And that took us a couple of years, because we went down to the 3rd level. And when we went down to the 3rd level, I said to David Bernstein, start the season, I says, we have to galvanise everybody both on and off the pitch. And there was 2 things I wanted to do. And I says, first of all, I want to put together a scheme whereby our branches could request someone go to their monthly branch meetings. And I think we had about just over 80 branches at the time. Someone from the club going to their branch meetings, monthly branch meetings, and get the understanding of what we're trying to do, and get them to support us, because we needed their patience, their support. Otherwise, we wouldn't get this thing off the ground, because we were carrying so much debt from the previous regime, from Francis Lee's regime. We're carrying so much debt. Players on over-inflated wages, not contributing. I remember there was one time, a game not long after I'd been there, I watched the people sitting behind the dugout, not even involved on the subs bench, and there's about £14,000 a week going out. Nothing. And don't forget, in 1997-8, £14,000 a week was a lot of money. So there's a lot of washing through of things, and we had 1 year to get out, because otherwise, to try and get back to the championship level, we then had to get the players out that we didn't want. We had to carry the debt, and we had to be successful. And thankfully, Gillingham, Joe got us in, got Joe Royle there, who'd been down that level before. He was used to that level. Fantastic ability with that kind of players. Got us through Gillingham, which was a real... but the second thing I did, I said, what we also want to do, Chairman, I want to say to the players that they'll only get paid bonuses at the end of the month if we're in the top 6. Because I know what their contracts are, and I met up with Joe backed me, Joe Royle, and David was a bit nervous, David Bernstein. We met the players committee, and I explained, that you're all on wages far in excess of this league.
Yeah.
So bonuses, there should be when you're at the top of this league. And I knew if we're in the top 6, we're at least going to make the playoffs. And then, due respect, the lads, they backed it. So we had supporters on board, we had the playing squad on board. We now sort of had to drive through players because we'd accumulated so many players in the squad. I remember going to see Joe Royle at Platt Lane one day. I walked through the office. He said, "Dennis, I just can't believe this." I just started laughing. I said, "Why?" He said, "I've just had a young lad come in here, and on his training kit, he's got number 66. So we were carrying so many players. We accumulated so many players without rhyme or reason. I just couldn't get it through my head. And a lot of players who wouldn't make any contribution to the cause.
Well, there was a lack of quality as well as too many numbers, wasn't there?
Far too many. We had a revolving door of Georgians, Scandinavians, and Germans who coming in, getting the money and disappearing, and not making any contribution. Really, not really long-term contribution. So we had a lot of strong words.
It's probably harder to get rid of players who aren't doing anything than actually bringing players in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, because quite understandable, the players have got good contracts and they're quite entitled to sit there and say, well, that's what you offered me, I'm quite happy to keep it. So you have to understand from a playing point of view their thought process as well.
I mean, you mentioned Chris Bird as one example of something that you did. What other kind of really practical measures did you do to change the culture of the organisation?
Chris changed the Junior Blues organisation, because with Junior Blues was just every young kid was a Junior Blue. And Chris changed it. I think it was age 0 to 5, to 4, then 6 to 14. So we then get a different strategy for the different age groups. Then we had a great relationship with the press. So in essence, there was that main source. And operationally, there was people. Chris was going through assessing who was making a contribution, who wasn't, because we had a catering operation going in the chairman's suite. Lovely food for the people who went there. But we were making no money, and probably losing a bit in essence. So there's a lot of loss-making things that were just ingrained into the system off the pitch. So we had to get all that. We had to negotiate new contracts. We had to get people. I mean, I remember when Alistair McIntosh came, he said to us one day, our best salesman's a fax machine. People actually requesting things rather than we going out and knocking on doors. And being a salesman myself in my own business, you've got to get out and knock on doors. I've been knocking on doors for 30 years, so, and that's how you have to do. You have to be progressive and really promote yourself in the best way possible. New contracts for kit. And the biggest challenge we had, because when we came and on the docks was a possible new stadium after the Commonwealth Games, so. And I said to be put, where's it going to be built? They said Beswick. I says, where is that? I hadn't got a clue where Beswick was. I'd never heard of it. So then that was way down the line, and therefore we had 2002 Commonwealth Games, 2003 moving to the new stadium. So we had to get the club through the bad times on a financially better footing, not a strong footing, but certainly a better one, and then get into the new stadium in the Premier League. So that was for the first time in my life, I had a long-term strategy. That's what influenced decisions in the period building up to that.
How crucial was that promotion from the third tier, the old Division 2? Without that, financially, what would have been the situation?
The following season, the following close season, we would have had a fire sale. We'd have been selling players, literally giving players away just to get them off the books. We've had to do that. And thankfully, John Wall and David Macon, who to this day have still not been given the credit for what they did, what they should have had. I mean, they put 25 million of their own money, because they'd sold JD Sports to Black's Leisure, and they put 25 million, around about 25 million of their own money over a period into the club, just to fill holes while we were getting the finances sorted out and getting the quality of the staff sorted out, the playing staff, the operational side of the staff. And they did all that. And then David Bernstein with his fantastic chairmanship, and then that's how we in the short term. And we got Jim Cassell in the academy, and again, Jim's still not got his credit that he fully deserves, and he still holds the record for the amount of players that have played first team in his tenure. I think it was 41. We had 4 players in the World Cup this year. We had 9 players at the Euros 2 years ago that came through the academy. So it's still not been fully recognised in my view.
That promotion from Division 1, I don't think many of the fans expected that. I think a period of stabilising would have been good enough. But Joe brings in Granville, Kennedy, the left-hand side improves dramatically, and we managed to go up automatically. I mean, that was a great, exciting time, wasn't it?
Well, it was great because Joe gave us 2 consecutive promotions, and he brought the right players, right place, right time. And that's the quality of a manager. he recognised the things we wanted, and he went and got them. Again, because of John and David's investment, we were able to do these things over and above the initial budget. Because the fans were still coming in. I remember my first year when we'd gone down to the third level. We played Blackpool first game of the season in the third level, and I was in Hollywood with my kids in Barbados. And I remember ringing. I had a phone bill of £147 the week before, because I missed the first game. I was away, because I pre-booked the holiday, and just ringing up Chris Bird, ringing up Joe Royle, ringing up David Bernstein. What's happening? What are we doing? How's it going? And I remember we had 28,000 people at that game, and I think we won 2-0. I think it was. And I thought, great, we've a bit of a breather there. We've got started, and that was important to get a good start going. And we stood a little bit. I think in October we were 12th, but by the end of January, beginning of February, we were 6th. We just got broken the top 6 around about February time, I think it was. And then Gillingham in the end, and then up again. We got another great season, and finish at Blackburn. I always remember that year, up and down, just on the fringes of the playoffs and not quite making it. And then obviously we broke in the top 6, and then the Blackburn game, I was sitting next to David Bernstein. I says, before the game, I said to the chairman, I says, what we doing if we win this game? What we celebrating? This is a week before the game. How are we going to celebrate? Oh, Dennis, he says, I can't speak about it. I'm too nervous. I don't want to talk about it. I'm tempting fate. Don't want to talk about it. So we're sitting together at the Blackburn game, and after we scored our third goal, I nudged him in the ribs. I said, Chairman, what are we doing tonight? Oh, yes, we can do it now. So we organised in the Midland Hotel, a room at the Midland Hotel where we could all go and celebrate promotion.
We go down the following year from the Premier League, and Joe Royle is sacked. What were the reasons for that?
Exactly the same reason as the first time round. We had a 1 year to get out of it again, because we then over-invested into the squad again with Premiership players. And there were a different kind of players, because we had Pele Wanshop, Alfie Inge Haaland, George Weah, a different kind of players. And Joe wasn't as comfortable with those players as he was with the players from a different kind, with being respectful to the players as well. We got to, after 10 games, I remember David Bernstein sent to me after 10 games in the Premier, we'd got 14 points. And David Bernstein says, Dennis, I think we're going to be okay here. We didn't win a game for 8 games. We dropped right down the pan. But again, we looked at it and we thought, Joe's done okay. Let's see if we can give him our support. He got the dreaded vote of confidence, but we did issue a statement because we were coming under pressure. We wanted to build back a bit of the team spirit, a bit of the unity, the belief that everybody was together. To say that, we've got to support Joe, blah, blah, blah. We never got going again. And again, the same problem arose. We were carrying debt, going down. We got 1 year to get out again, because again, that journey to the new stadium, we had to get that journey up and running again so we could get back 1 year to get back out, because we were in the stadium in 2003.
We needed Premier League football when moving to the new stadium.
Correct, absolutely. That was the target. And we didn't just go down. We were relegated by 8 points, so it wasn't even close.
No, it was a poor season.
It wasn't even close, So again, we had a board meeting, and I had appendicitis just near the end of the game this season, and I had to go for the appendix operation, the Alex in Cheadle, and the lads had a board meeting, the directors, and came out with talking about it, and I says, and Kevin said, Kevin Keegan's name came up. So that's not a problem. I says, I'll ring Kevin. So I rang Kevin, and I said, what do you think? Oh, he says, I won't talk to you until Joe's not there. I said, it's unfair. I said, not a problem. I said, I'll go back. So I kept on at him. I said, well, let's just talk, because we still hadn't made a decision about Joe. There was so much conjecture about should we, shouldn't we. And we spoke, and he said, well, once you've made it, you make a decision on Joe first, and I'll give you my decision. But he was very fair. Kevin was very fair. And the board spoke about it and said, okay, well, let's take our chances, that Kevin will come. And unfortunately, Joe had to go. And then we went and approached Kevin.
What was the appeal of Kevin Keegan?
Mr. Motivator.
He can energise.
Mr. Motivator. We needed Mr. Motivator. We needed, again, 1 year, and he was a motivator. And I'd known him since he was 75, 76, when we were together in the England team. And he said, you never stay anywhere more than 4 to 5 years. He says, the time's running. He's never stayed anywhere longer than 4 to 5 years. But in the shorter term, he's done the job. And when people knew he was coming, I got calls saying, "Oh, he'll trouble. He'll want to run this. He'll want to run that. He'll throw his dummy at the pram." I says, "Listen, let him get us in the Premier League. In the short term, I'll handle the bit afterwards. We'll handle a bit afterwards. Let's get out. That's the most important. Is getting to our new stadium." And David Bernstein, I drove up to Kevin, up to see Kevin, because I knew where he lived up in the northeast. And we had a great meeting, and he decided. He said, "Yes, I'll deal. I'll go." And then from then on, we were on a whistle stop. I mean, it was like 100 mile an hour. Kevin went this. We wouldn't have got players like Peter Schmeichel, Nicholas Anelka, Ali Benarbia, Ail Berkovic. We wouldn't have got those quality of players without Kevin Keegan.
How was he doing it? Just through his reputation in the game, or
his image, his reputation, contacts. He's had Arthur Cox, who was my assistant coach at Sunderland with Bob Stokoe, so I knew Arthur as well. And Arthur, at one stage, when I was leaving Man City almost before I signed a new contract, he was at Newcastle, and he had a conversation about me going to Newcastle. So I knew Arthur pretty well. Wily old fox, and him and Kevin were a good partnership. And that was it. We just got them in, and they cracked on quickly. We got players in place, and all of a sudden we were flying again. And I always remember when we got promoted. I mean, even speaking to supporters now, and we're going on their branch meetings, they always remember that year with Kevin Keegan in the Championship.
Fantastic.
Was just fantastic. Scored more 100 goals, I think it was. We got fantastic. The atmosphere was just phenomenal. And then we went in there, and I always remember we played Barcelona in a friendly game here, 34,000 in the new stadium, because it was a test event, so we couldn't go to full capacity. And just looked around the stadium, Barcelona walking out in the Etihad, and everybody's got blue shirts in the stadium, all the replica shirts, and I thought, that's where we should be.
Yeah. And then we finished 9th, of course, in the
first
that's
season,
right. Which is a decent finish.
Decent finish, yeah, no problem. And Kevin, just fantastic.
What about the Robbie Fowler signing? Because I know that was one.
A strange one. Kevin, whilst he's got his strengths, his weaknesses is he falls out with love with players very quickly. He gets players in, and then if they don't perform, he just wants to churn them. He just wants to move them on. And we didn't have the money to keep buying players and move them on after a year, 18 months. And to be perfect honest, Robbie wasn't fully fit. He'd had this bad knee injury. Well, we did a good deal with Leeds, and that's where Kevin fell out with David Bernstein, because David was trying to do the deal, and Kevin said, "No, I want him." And David didn't think the deal was right for us. And
based on his injury record, you mean?
Injuries, yeah. And what we were looking for the team, and Kevin wanted him. And whilst he was one of the best finishers I've ever seen, I used to go to training and watch him. He was unbelievable. Him and Nicholas and I up front, which is phenomenal. But you could see he lacked a yard of pace. And I even, after the first, we got him in one season, the start of the next season, I said to Kevin, I says, Robbie's commitment is great, his stamina is great, he just lost that little bit of real sharpness. I said, why don't we just pay for a conditioning coach for 2 weeks before season starts and get him in great shape, and then he's ready for the start of the season. And Kevin says, I'll speak to Robbie. And he came back, no, Robbie says he's going to do some sharpening work himself before the season. Okay. After a month, you could see Robbie wasn't, and Kevin pulled him out of the squad.
So it's sort of 03-04, Keegan, the Keegan tenure starts to lose its way slightly. The signings seem to drop down a level to me. Tarnat, Bosvelt, this kind of player, decent players, but not going to help us kick on.
We were still plugging holes. You see, we hadn't got rid of the debt. We were still carrying. It's a difficult thing to make the analysis, because we couldn't start putting salaries up. We couldn't stop putting the ticket prices up. The salaries were going up to get people in on a short-term basis. The commercial position of Manchester City wasn't exciting at that time. The market hadn't exploded. The global market hadn't exploded. So it was a real balance in the scales kind of thing. It was like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and 2 steps forward, or 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. We keep moving players out to get the money in. It really was a balancing act, and it was like you were driving, but you were trying to keep bailing out every so often. It was a real difficult time.
He seemed to be chasing older players who had achieved a lot in the game, but were perhaps coming to the end of the career. Do you think?
Yeah, but he was doing it for the right reasons, because he reckoned we need short-termism, real short-termism. But you know, some of the players produced, some didn't. You know, and that was the real problem. They just weren't producing, and you could see Kevin was losing patience. And after 2 seasons, I remember David Bernstein said to me, because he signed a 4-year deal, "Should we offer Kevin an extension?" You know, I says, "Chairman, he won't be interested. I keep telling you, he won't stay longer than 4 to 5 years. He's never done it anyway. He doesn't. His strength is short-termism, motivation, energizing. But then when the energy starts draining, he drains his own energy." And Arthur Cox had left, so he was exposed a little bit there. So there was a lot of things. We were firefighting in a lot of areas.
And then, what would you say is, in the entire time that you were a director, what would be the single best transfer that the club made in terms of the impact, value for money, etc.?
I would think Nicholas Anelka.
Yeah.
I would think Nicholas came and give us a real boost. You know, give us a world superstar who produced. And he was such a nice man. I mean, people give criticism about his brothers this and the brothers that. We never had any problems with him, you know, really in the early stages, you know. The big problem he had was Kevin had was Nicholas and Elgin and Robbie didn't get on. So he had that challenge, and he didn't really get as much as he possibly could out of those two in a short term, because, you know, the best game for me is when we played United here. Because Kevin used to be whinging about new stadium, there's no atmosphere when the players come out, you need to get the fans in the stadium earlier. And I says, "Kevin, let me tell you 2 things. First of all, we've moved to a new stadium. We've got everybody who sat at Main Road had the same pals sitting next to them for 20, 15, 20 years. They're familiar, they're relaxed. All of a sudden, in the new stadium, they're sitting around 30, 40, 50 strangers. So they're a little bit shy, introverted, and waiting to see what's going to happen. And secondly, be perfectly honest, the quality of the pitch, the playing surface, what's happening on there. So there's 2 issues that you've got to manage. If you get those 2 right, there won't be a problem, because we need the time to settle in, to familiarise themselves, the fans familiarise themselves with the stadium, and also the quality of performance. And we played Man United here. We beat them 4-1 when Robbie scored, when Sean Wright-Phillips came off the line, wrapped the 4th goal in under the side of the crossbar, and the place was rocking. Yeah. And Kevin sent me after that. He said, "I see what you mean, Dennis." So he knew, he knew. If we get it right here, which we have, you can see the atmosphere now, but we had to do all the hard yards.
So he announces he's going to leave at the end of the season, and the decision's taken for Stuart Pearce to come in. Initially, he has quite a good impact, but then things go quite badly
because
wrong.
He came in the February, so he didn't. All he had to do was, I'd been round with him to support his branch meetings, and with experienced players being in these meetings, and he seemed to be well liked by the supporters, by the senior players who were going to be influential in the dressing room. And it was February when Kevin left, so the transfer window had gone. So we needed to get the end of the season. So I said to Chairman, recommend as an interim manager to the end of the season, and then let's take it. As it happens, he had a good end of season. We would have gotten to Europe if Robbie Fowler hadn't missed a last-minute penalty against Middlesbrough. So really, there was not an awful lot available. We couldn't go and approach other managers with great money, because we didn't have great money. So we just give him the job, and he struggled. He desperately struggled with rather than having to bring his own people in and implement his own ideas. Whereas the previous half a season, he just kept Kevin's ideas going.
Yeah.
And he did struggle. Whether we didn't give him enough support, we didn't have financial support, but and he did struggle. And I think the second season was even worse. I think at the end of the season, we didn't score a goal for 10 games at home or something silly.
Well, we were knocked out of the Cups by Doncaster and Chesterfield, and we scored just 10 league goals at home all season, and none after New Year's Day. I mean, that's a pretty damning record.
That was an issue which we had to go. But by this time, to be perfect, David Bernstein had left, which was very sad a couple of years earlier. John had taken on board, and there was a bit. The one thing which we'd had in the boardroom when I first came on was unity, stability, that team spirit amongst the guys. That started. There was 1 or 2 people who were after their own. I mentioned Alistair McIntosh, who was trying to run the place, and him and I didn't see eye to eye in a lot of instances. I probably should have left. Probably should have resigned a year or so before, But my wife even said to me, because my responsibility was also for the academy, and I worked on a regular basis with Jim Cassell, and I felt an awful lot of loyalty to Jim. And my wife said that, said nobody knows football better than you, and then you've got a great relationship with Jim Cassell, and you're very successful as an academy. Why should you leave? So I stayed on it probably a year or so too long, because I was being sidelined by Macintosh.
You talk with great fondness about David Bernstein. Do you think he's one of the most important figures in the club's recent history?
Well, in that period he was. I think everything in life is about timing. And timing, as far as Manchester City was concerned, we needed a figurehead. We needed a genuine professional figurehead who'd been in businesses. He'd been on the boards of directors of many in the big PLC companies, Pentland, Ted Baker, Farah, a lot of those big companies. And you got the structure in place. And you need a structure. You need a good quality structure with good quality people doing what they're good at in the structure.
And you talk about Macintosh there. What was it? What kind of set alarm bells ringing with you that perhaps he was?
Well, when he started, he would invite me to certain football meetings, but then he'd try and do them himself. Like anything else. People at one stage, people thought I was going to be chairman. I think when Francis Lee left, when David Bernstein left, I said no chance. I do what I'm good at. You have to do what you're good at. And when he first came in, he did well because he was a financial controller, dealing with what I call inanimate objects, facts and figures.
Yeah.
But dealing with people is a different thing. He didn't have that skill, but he thought he had. So it was just a split which was getting wider and wider. He was sidelining me on certain meetings. There's one time on reserve team games, used to have the reserve team games, and I used to meet up with John and Alistair and the manager before the game and have a little chat about the reserve team. And one time I came into the Etihad and I walked into Alistair's room, and there was Stuart Pearce, John Wardle and Alistair Macintosh sat there, and I hadn't been invited to the meeting. And John said, just give us a couple of minutes, Dennis. I said, okay. I should have walked out then.
Yeah.
I should have walked then and resigned. But again, my loyalty to the club, my loyalty to Jim Cassell and the academy just stayed on a bit longer.
Talking to you about your life and career, it is so rich and varied, and probably never what you imagined when you first started playing as a youngster. Do you have any regrets at all, or has it just been one, incredible ride for you?
I think it's been one fantastic journey, especially when I see what we have here now, Roms. We're sat here at the Etihad campus. I'm looking across out the window and I can see the stadium there, I can see all the facilities that we've got here. And I'm just so pleased that every decision I've made, staying on at school, getting the opportunity to play for Sunderland youth team, winning the 73 Cup win, leaving Sunderland at the right time, having a great 4 years at Manchester City, leaving there at the right time, had a fantastic 2 years at New York, learning about the development of how sport and business interlinks, how they develop together, how one needs the other, and it's just been fantastic experience. And coming back here and seeing how Malcolm Allison looked after the kids and where the problems were there, understanding about the academy, then leaving and starting my new businesses, 3, as I said, property business, and in retail travel agency, a video and conference production business, and running those, getting my kids going, and I've got 3 fantastic kids, and the responsibility of my wife's taken over when I've been all over the place, supporting the Manchester City as a director. I remember one trip we went down to MK Dons, Milton Keynes branch, and I did my day in the office, left the office at 5, came home, had a sandwich, jumped on the motorway with the M6 about 6 o'clock. Well, you know what the M6 like is that time. Got out to the MK branch, 8:45, did an hour and a half Q&A, signing autographs, jumped on the motorway, 10:15, got home 12:30. And that was something to see how happy the supporters are, and I'm still visiting branches now, and that thing's all the hard yards that we did on the accumulation of 97 to sort of 2003, and got everybody making difficult decisions. There's some good people that change them. I love business phrases, and if you can't change the people, you've got to change the people, unfortunately. Make some hard decisions, but look where we are now. If you hadn't done the hard yards, and all my decisions are made in my football, my business career and my directorship career, I can't say there's much. I would like to have done a bit more as a director near the end when I felt when I was being sidelined. I probably should have done a bit more then.
Thank you so much to Dennis for being so candid. And if you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe wherever it is that you do your podcast listening. We've got plenty more of these for you. I've been speaking to Joe Royle and Andy Morrison about our glorious promotion campaigns in 99 and 2000. Paul Lake about his injury troubles and battle with depression. Francis Lee, who is one of the best players we've ever had and who later returned as chairman. And Brian Marwood, who has played a central role in the club's recent success. They're all available now, wherever it is you do your listening. And don't forget to visit mancity.com and download the official Man City app for all the latest news and features. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and hopefully you'll join me again soon.